'Twas down by the glenside I met an old woman, looking young nettles. She ne'er saw me coming. I listened a while to the song she was singing. Glory, oh, to the Bohemian man.
Let us away!
Frank de Burka, witness statement 694. About 2 o'clock in the afternoon, all the companies were ordered to line up in the yard of the GPO in preparation for leaving the burning building. Eamon Door, witness statement 153. After some time, O'Rahilly and a group of men filed out, and I asked one, John R. Reynolds, where they were going. In a most cynical voice he said, "We are going to clear the British out of Moore Street, fight our way to Williams & Wood's Jam Factory in Parnell Street, and then try to connect up with Ned Daly in the forecourts." Liam Tannum, witness statement 242. I could hear tremendous crashes in the GPO, and the heat was intense. At this point I thought a song would be a good thing, and I sang the Soldier Song, accompanied by a coming-on girl named Madge Fagan.
Are you Irishmen? That you won't charge?
I wonder if those fellas still think that we're afraid of them.
Charge! For the glory of God and the honour of Ireland!
Fear not all,
darling Nancy, I was shot leading a rush up Moore Street and took refuge in a doorway. While I was there, I heard the men pointing out where I was and made a bolt for the laneway. I am in now. I got more. One bullet, I think. Tons and tons of love, dearie, to you and the boys, Centennial and Anna. It was a good fight. Anyhow, please deliver this to Nanny O'Rahilly, 40, Herbert Park, Dublin. Goodbye, darling.
Sean McLaughlin, witness statement 0290. I encountered Sean McDermott, who said, "I've been looking for you. We were evacuating the post office and I want you to stay with us." I said, "Where do we evacuate to?" And as I spoke, someone said, "Williams and Woods." I replied, "That is just mad. Williams and Woods is in the hands of the British." I believe Pierce said, "Well, O'Rahilly has just gone there." I said, "My God, he'll be killed. It is certain death." Frank Burke, witness statement 694. As the street was being swept by machine gun fire, I could see the bullets like hailstones hopping in the street.
From then on, Padraig Pearse at the side door of the GPO with a wave of a sword would usher 20 more volunteers across.
Michael Mulvihill lost his life and was found the next day leaning against the bottling stores here on the right.
Henry Coyle, another volunteer, fell dead in this laneway.
It tells you the intensity of the fire was so great that they thought fire was emanating from the building. In actual fact, it was ricocheting bullets from machine gun fire.
Henry Place and places thereon. Frank Henderson, witness statement. In order to draw the attention of the British off the men who were boring through, McDermott wanted a mock barricade erected where we were at the junction of Muir Street and Henry Place. I took charge of this operation. Tom Clark, who was at the head of the column, called out for volunteers to try and get across, and he led 3 of us, making 4 in all. Oscar Traynor. We reached the corner of Muir Street, and Clark called upon me to occupy these buildings, and to dig from one building to another in order to extend our position. We smashed our way into the building and progressed as instructed from house to house. Some volunteers continued to work through the night, boring between buildings towards the north, and by dawn on Saturday the volunteers had made considerable headway along the terrace, tunnelling their way at different levels from house to house. Michael Kremen, witness statement 564. Where the lane along which we had come joins Muir Street, which was fire swept, and we were directed into the nearest house in Muir Street, marked D on sketch map. Later I was engaged breaking through the walls from house to house. As we broke through towards the last house, I discovered that a storehouse was situated to the rear of the last house, and that the first floor of this storehouse was provided with a large bay window, marked E on sketch map. It was obvious to me that this was an ideal firing position.
I know the blood these streets have soaked of soldiers, children, and pub fights. I name the ghosts that walk about the dim...
Seamus Robinson, witness statement 0156. I got up and moved through the buildings towards an end house. There were a number of volunteers there, including George Plunkett. We could see a British barricade nearby. A party was lined up to rush the barricade.
It fills my soul with rage.
According to Kathleen, during the night, Clark wrote on the wall, 5th day, Irish Republic. The 18th Royal Irish, a regiment of Irishmen in the British Army, had shot at everything that moved in the street. At such short range, their shooting was deadly. I saw an old man come out of a shop. No sooner did he appear than a bullet from one of the Royal Irish struck him, and he fell. A little girl about 4 or 5 years started bawling, "My granddad is dead." A final council of war was held. By a majority, it was agreed to surrender. Tom Clark alone stood against the decision. He had been through too much to see this fight end in defeat. However, he changed his mind. He wished to keep the executive looking united and not give anyone the chance to say there had been a split among the leaders. McDermott came to Elizabeth O'Farrell and asked her to make a white flag. Tom Clark was standing by the window. He broke down and Winifred Carney went to him, only to burst into tears herself. They held each other for a few moments.
Number 16 Moore Street, where Padraig Pearse and James Connolly held their final council of war. It was in this building they decided to talk truce with the British, and they sent Elizabeth O'Farrell out with a white flag of truce down to General Lowe at the end of the street. She returned to get Pearse a number of hours later, and then her and Pearse marched to the top of the road, where Padraig Pearse handed over the sword to General Lowe. It was the end of the rebellion.
For many years, several developers have been buying up Moore Street, and that's one of the reasons why there is so much dereliction and so many buildings that are empty and have their shutters closed.
They want to build a shopping centre. What do we need another shopping centre for in Dublin? Do we need another shopping centre? No! I can't hear you. Do we need another shopping centre? No!
You may not care that this street is to be turned into a gigantic Dundrum shopping centre. Well, the essential difference is that we care. That's what counts. We care.
No time for chat. This is serious.
If we do not stop the government from abandoning this sacred site, then we can bring our children and our grandchildren here, and school teachers can bring their students here and tell them of the heroic deeds that happened in this place. And we can say the following: in the toilets of Burger King, the injured James Connolly was eased through the walls of 10 Moore Street as the rebels burrowed their way through the walls of this terrace in 1916. They could also say it was up here in Dunkin' Donuts that the great O'Reilly led his charge against the British barricade and wrote his last letter to his wife and family. Or they could say it was here in front of Marks and Spencer's that Nurse Elizabeth O'Farrell carried the white flag of surrender. Ladies and gentlemen, can you imagine anything as absurd as this? Could you imagine this happening to the Anne Frank house in Amsterdam? No, because a civilised state with a civilised government respects its own history. And let us be quite clear, chartered lands cannot now develop this site. It is in the hands of NAMA, and if it is in the hands of NAMA, it is in the hands of the state, and the state is supposed to represent us. But the state are presenting chartered lands with €5 million of your money, of taxpayers' money, to put a museum here, which will be dwarfed by a huge shopping mall. All of the buildings in this terrace are connected to 1916.
The National Museum, the experts in the area. So we have one arm of the state through NAMA about to demolish with your money, with public money, the battlefield site that another arm of the state, the National Museum say is the most important site in modern Irish history. 5 million of public monies. We could set up a volunteer force of workers who would do that work for nothing.
Moore Street and its environs into O'Connell Street is the most important battlefield site in 20th century Irish history.
And what makes Moore Street unique is that the Moore Street buildings are the great survivors of the Rising. They weren't blitzed during the course of the bombardment, so we have a terrace of houses that dates from before the Rising and survived the Rising. Particularly honoured by the presence of an ambassador, the first ambassador to visit We start here at 21 Henry Street, where the Proclamation of the Republic was drawn up and signed by the 7 signatories.
The reason for this campaign is that developers, even after the recession, still want to obliterate it and build a suburban type shopping centre in its place, a featureless, characterless, cultureless centre, which will bring no employment, really, will bring no prosperity to the local people, and will destroy our history. That's what the effects of that will be. And that's why this campaign has been started by the relatives of the signatories.
I would like to say that on behalf of the 300,000 Cuban combatants,
les rendimos homenaje a los que cayeron por la independencia.
We today pay homage to those who fell fighting for the independence of Ireland. And we believe it is a great thing to campaign and fight for the preservation of these historical sites.
Congratulate these young children, because if the state has its way, if chartered lands have their way, where these buildings that the 1916 leaders tunnelled their way through before the surrender at the end of April 1916 will now become a car park and a John Lewis superstore. And it's these children that will lose out. We have a duty to preserve our culture, our history for these children.
My advice is based on 40 years service in the National Museum of Ireland, 23 as director, including charge of the archaeological excavation of the Wood Quay site with its attendant court cases and delays. Remember, please, that once you allow the destruction of buildings and their neighbourhood ambience, you cannot bring them back.
My name is Coit Vic Unrick.
Okay.
And I am a daughter of one of the men who was in the GPO and a daughter-in-law of another man, Frank Henderson. Well, we're here in order to save dreadful destruction on such a precious and important place. This is where we gained our freedom. This is where the state was set up. And it's unimaginable that there wouldn't be a fitting memorial, a little scrap in the middle of a huge monstrosity of a shopping centre is an insult to the men who risked their lives and those who lost their lives. No other country, think of the Alamo, think of so many countries who are proud of their historical monuments, and I can't believe that it could be neglected so much, and it's very important. This would be it could be a beautiful tourist attraction to have a footprint memorial in this area, because there's more to 1916 than just the GPO.
Yeah.
The great are not great. The great only appear great because we are on our knees. Let us arise!
Mary Fitzpatrick, I'm Fianna Fáil City Councillor.
Okay, and Mary, can you tell me what is happening here?
Well, today we're having a demonstration to highlight the appalling dereliction of the buildings here on Moore Street, which were designated a national monument. Over the decades they've been allowed to deteriorate and dilapidate. They're in private ownership. And we are all coming together today to remember their heroic efforts, but also to send a strong message to government that these buildings and this national monument needs to be restored.
Can you tell me why we're here today?
Because of the intention to build a shopping centre which would demolish almost all of the terrace 10 to 25 Moore Street, including 60% of the National Monument.
Successive administrations since 2007 have failed to honour their commitment for undertaking to preserve this national monument. 5 of the leaders of the signatories to our Proclamation of Independence spent their final hours of freedom in these houses. Not in one house, not in 4 houses, in the entire terrace from number 10 all the way up to 25. And let nobody tell us that one house is more important than another. Each and every one of these houses.
The visit took place on a damp Dublin evening. The light was falling. The street traders in Moore Street were gone or going home. And the Friday evening buzz was beginning to rise. The visit began with a walk along O'Rahilly Parade, where a large wall plaque now commemorates the O'Rahilly's death. The path where he lay is gone, but it was not difficult to think of him lying there, callously left to bleed, his life ebbing slowly from him. Somewhere hereabout, McLaughlin and those others knelt and said that final act of contrition over the O'Rahilly's body before covering his face with a handkerchief. Close by was the site of the British barricade at the Parnell Street end of Moore Street. And closer still, the bodies of Carrigan, Shortis and Mackin would have lain dead around their leader. The court was brought on a tour of the properties that line Moore Street, shown the remnants of the bricked up holes that the Republicans had burrowed a century before, and shown the room in number 16 where the leaders of the provisional government held their final war councils. Many of the buildings that the court viewed are in need of repair. Throughout the court's visit, workmen were quietly going about their jobs. Outside, the quiet hubbub of the city could be heard. But throughout the tour there was a remarkable sense of having stepped back into another era, and a striking sense of closeness to the men and women who fought that our republic might come into being.
This whole terrace we're talking about had a garrison of 300 men who fled from the GPO and took refuge in this place.
In terms of the window that's up there, you're not allowed in, is that correct? Or?
Well, no, the first floor front room is actually sealed, so okay. the only access to the front floor area is via ladder from the street.
Yes, there's a room directly over our front door that has been blocked off to any sort of exits to it. So the stairwell has been taken away, and floor coverings are there, and doors in it from the rest of the room. Has new walls built around it, so there's completely no access except for through the front window, up a ladder and in the front window. when we had some of the family members before tried to gain access to it to have a look to see could they predate anything from pre-16 in there. The landlord's chartered land called the police and tried to claim that it wasn't part of our lease. We'd no right to allow people in. They're obviously worried there's something up there. So it's believed there's fireplaces and a few and our bit of the architecture work inside will predate it.
Okay. We've had the room inspected by our engineers, and we have reason to believe that there are 1916 elements within the building, and that the building, in fact, is a 1916 structure. The reason it's been given by the developer for its demolition, and the reason they're seeking the consent of the minister for its demolition, is the argument is that it's a post-16 building. Okay. We believe it is not. Okay. The only way to properly ascertain its standing as a building is to have it independently assessed.
Okay. Is there a risk to having a series of vacant lots?
Well, that's what exactly will happen if they get their way and they bulldoze. This will be raised to the ground. Directly behind us, between us and O'Connell Street, is the old Carlton cinema site that's been raised.
Okay.
So suddenly what will appear in the Dublin landscape will be a direct link from O'Connell Street to the very front door of the Gaelic Centre, which is also owned by chartered land.
Okay.
It's quite convenient for them, really.
One of the reasons why there is so much dereliction and so many buildings that are empty and have their shutters closed. The main guy behind this is a guy called Joe O'Reilly. He has a significant interest in the ILAC Centre. He also owns the Dundrum Shopping Centre. But like most of the big names in the city, he went bankrupt during the last few years. So he's been financed by NAMA to perhaps proceed with his plans. The problem with his plans are that they propose to demolish almost everything on the far side of the street. All he wants to keep, and this is only because he was put under pressure to do so, is the 4 buildings to my right, the Plunkett building and the buildings on the other side of that. And what he wants to put behind them is yet another huge shopping centre in the heart of Dublin. If the ILAC wasn't enough, or the Jervis Centre wasn't enough, he now wants to build the Dublin Central project. And in order to facilitate that, he wants to close the Paris Bakery and run a road straight through the heart of it.
Who is it that's destroying our present? Who is it that's destroying our future? It's the bankers and the developers. They say, concentrate on the present, concentrate on the future. But they're wiping out our present. They're destroying our future. These are the same people who say that they want progress. I say they're not developers. I say they're destroyers. We need markets like this. We need shops like this. We need local areas. That's what we need.
They want us to forget about the people who stood up against the might of the British Empire. It's like it's the powers that be at the moment, you know. They don't want us to be thinking about it. They don't want us to. They want to whitewash our history. Yeah, Caroline Tini Shellalo, Trish Ari Macnacoska. As Cussi Gwil Dini Fos a Caha Shellalo. Agiri a Gashki, a Celt,
Dr. Wallace's letter, 21st of September 2011. I have recently received the application for the proposed destruction of part of the backyard areas of the National Monument, as well as parts of the yards of number 10 and number 11 Moor Lane and the accompanying works to the structures on the Moor Street section of the monument. Both the application and the Chief Archaeologist's recommendations are inadequate, reflecting standard archaeological practices rather than engaging with the cultural historical aspects of the monument. The application fails to supply any information regarding the building's use during 1916, the layout of the buildings as a strategic military strongpoint, and the interrelationship between the monument and other buildings at the time. My considered view is that any consent you give should be mindful of the national historical importance of the whole Moor Street area with its laneways and buildings. I honestly believe that the low single and two-storey red brick houses which make up the neighbourhood north of the GPO and east of Moor Street North as far as the laneway where the O'Rahilly fell together constitute a battlefield site of European importance which should be preserved in its entirety. Consider how the proper full-scale preservation of all the streets, lanes, buildings and boundaries, if properly presented and marketed, could be potentially one of Dublin's leading tourist destinations.
This must not be allowed to happen. We've lost too much in this country. My grandfather would be very proud of you all for coming down here today, and I certainly am, as well as the campaigners.
We have numerous laws within Europe to protect buildings behind me. Numerous. We have a Lord Mayor that has more power than any local authority, but he's never been asked to invoke his power to seek assist and desist. He can overrule Dublin City Council. He can overrule On Board Panola. And if you want to ensure that this building behind me is protected, that's the person you focus your attention on.
I'm a Sinn Féin councillor, Dublin City Council, Micheál McDonagh. I'm a member of the Moor Street Advisory Committee of the City Council, and I want to wholeheartedly endorse and sign the pledge on my own behalf, of Sinn Féin, on behalf of all our candidates. When the Moor Street Advisory Committee met Minister Deenahan a few months ago, he waxed lyrical about how good Moor Street still was commercially, and it was still a great place to visit. And he mentioned the Paris Bakery. And one of his officials actually turned to him, and we could hear him, and he said, "Minister, you've consented to demolish the Paris Bakery." NAMA is very much central to this saga. They must be challenged. They are an arm of the state.
I feel today that both my grandmother, my grandfather, if they're looking down, would be absolutely over the moon and would admire what Nicky Keogh and this great bunch of men from the Canada Historical Society have. When my dear country will be made, and they shall once again, and they shall once again, and they shall once again, and Ireland on a province be, and they shall once again. One more time, boys again. They shall once again, and they shall once again, and Ireland on a province be, and they shall once again.
Hi, my name is Leo Johnson. I'm a grandnephew of two of E-Company Irish volunteers who were from Lochfarnham. Their names were Matthew Caffrey and Henry Gannon. When they left the GPO in 1916, they came down these laneways here. The GPO was just behind us. You can see the corner of the spire there. Yeah. They came down these laneways. There was machine guns, artillery, fire, darkness, no lights. Came down as far as here. When they came to this corner here, there was machine gun post. They couldn't make it out onto Moor Street. They broke through this doorway right here behind this bollard, behind this advertisement. When they got in that door, some members of E-Company helped carry James Connolly up the stairs, number 10 Moor Street.
This is a very, very significant historical area. It's where they burrowed in. It's where we have this
in front of it. I mean, what does that say? I mean, that is such a lack of respect. A respect for those people, a respect for our history, and respect for ourselves as Irish citizens. If we, if we don't hold that in regard, we don't hold ourselves in regard.
It's my street, it's your street, not the high street. Moore Street, it's a fruit and veg, fish and flower street. Moore Street is our street.
That it's the people's history, and it's very important that that is part and parcel of what this whole place is about. That maybe it's not the best idea in the whole world to build another huge big shopping centre across this area. And that sale, the next process of that sale is starting tomorrow. So this campaign is going to really have to crank up and be much more effective at stopping this wholesale destruction and selling off of the rich and wonderful heritage that we have here in Moore Street.
Beware the risen people, 'cause we're coming down your street. Lie down, sticks and stones will break our bones, but we will not lie down. We will not lie down. We will not lie down. Sticks and stones will break our bones, but we will not lie down. We will not lie down. We will not lie down. Sticks and stones will break our bones, but we will not lie down.
Each and every house behind me bears witness to history. Each and every house along this terrace from number 10 all the way up to number 25 was occupied and held in 1916 in the name of the Irish Republic. It was held in your name, it was held in my name, and it was held in the name of future generations, and it will not be given away on our watch. "16 years ago today, 16 years ago, Dublin City Council gave permission to demolish this terrace in its entirety. We can only conclude that 16 years ago today, city planners had no knowledge of their own history. Well, they can't claim that now, can they? Because through a sustained campaign for 14 long years, we have made it loud and clear, we are not going to have another wood quay in this city in our time. And the latest proposal is Project Jewel. I kid you not, they consider the Dundrum Shopping Centre to be the jewel in Mr O'Reilly and Chartered Land's property portfolio. Dundrum Shopping Centre is considered a jewel in the crown. This is the jewel in the crown of Chartered Land's planning development, except they're not going to develop it anymore. They're now going to hive it off, called Project Jewel. They're going to auction it off. They're going to auction off our history, they think, to the highest bidder. What a gross distortion of our history. We have to take this opportunity to commend the politicians at local government level, led by Sinn Féin, supported by Fianna Fáil, the Green Party, People Before Profit and Independence. They said no to an appalling plan to land swap the national monument for the last two houses on the terrace that are still ours.
That's why we're here, to save this terrace, to save this history and save this market as well. People often forget that it's a market. It's a livelihood for small businesses here. It's a livelihood for people, and it was a livelihood for a lot more small businesses that have been chased out over the years.
At our last AGM, a motion that was put forward by a relative, Jim Heron Connolly, who's here, was unanimously supported by the Relatives Association to save Moore Street and protect Moore Street. We had our arms around Moore Street, and there's no reason we're going to surrender. We're not going to put down our arms. You know, we're not putting our arms down. There's no surrender. And we're going to continue this on.
All these people care for this street, and this is only the tip of the iceberg compared to the diaspora. Now, we've got the Interpreter Centre and 7 million spent over the GPO, and I can't understand, there's no country else in the world, that we cannot connect that Interpreter Centre via a door to this battlefield area, which should be sensitively done up, so that the diaspora and the tourists coming here could see where our nation was started. This belongs to future generations. I keep saying this. It is not belonging to any one government who are in their term of office.
Well, I'm here today for the Arms Around Moore Street, just to give it a bit of support. I think it's a fantastic idea. I think this is one of the most historic terraces possibly in Western Europe.
Yeah. You know, it's about saving the last, what is essentially the heart of Dublin. And it's up to the Irish people to come out and stand and save it. You know, what are we going to leave for our children? If you look along the street, you see the only sign of history is a little small plaque hidden high above the street where nobody will see it.
They're saying here that we need another shopping centre on Moore Street. Clearly she just had to close them down. I mean, that's been here a long time. So
it's a great coming together of people who have as a primary interest the notion of preserving history and historical artefacts, which is what these buildings are. I mean, they're so important to the story of 1916. Almost everything else to do with 1916 has been obliterated.
You're looking at the poster here. This is the way Moore Street could end up. These are all like what we would envisage as being like having the shops with the original shop fronts back on them. The whole terrace from the start here from number 10, where the volunteers entered the terrace on the first day, and they bore their way through up here to number 16, which is Plunkets, which is the building we're outside now. As I say, all the way right up to here, up to O'Rahilly Parade. These are all due for demolition now under the current plan, and possibly they're up for sale as well. You know, on the Project Jewel, which is the latest development from Chartered Lands.
That was on the Irish Times.
That was on the Irish Times. So there is still a possibility of this properties being sold off, even though they've acknowledged that the national monument from number 14 to 17 is important, and as well as that, of lately, Board Falch have put Moore Street onto the map as having having significance as a tourist trail. However, contradictory to that now, these are still all up for sale. Okay. And yet in the Board Falch plan, we've got them talking about the O'Rahilly Parade down here and talking about Moore Street as an entire terrace.
Okay. Your relation is?
I've got 9 relations that took part. I've none that were in Moore Street, unfortunately, but my grandfather was in Jacob's Garrison and my great uncles were all in the Citizen Army.
My name is Brony Lewing. I would be granddaughter of Jerry Boland, grandniece of Harry Boland and Edmund Boland. We are trying to get the government to realise they must maintain this terrace. I went to a garrison meeting in Jacob's factory. That's a school, a DIT now, so there's nothing to show where my granddad fought.
A very important movie is happening here on Tuesday to do with the preservation of the terrace at Moore Street. We need feet on the street at this stage of the game. There seems to be some sort of an agenda that wants to rob us of our collective mutual history, and we need to get down and do something about it, so come on down.
One of the main issues that an awful lot of relatives were having is Moore Street, the issue of Moore Street. It was after the GPO, the rebels went to Moore Street. It was the last stand in a way. And at the moment, the relatives, 100 years later, are fighting to save that street. So 100 years ago, they were making history, and 100 years later, their relatives are trying to save that history. The problem is that it's it's going to be demolished in place of a shopping centre, and Dublin does not need another shopping centre. When you go to a city, when you go with any city, you want culture, you want what makes it unique. Dublin's 1916 history, and you can see from all the 1916 tours, there's a market there. Not only does it make business sense, but also culturally, it's nice to actually go visit a piece of old Dublin. I think it's a real jewel in Dublin that should be treasured.
Disgrace could quite destroy their glory's trace. For often in O'Connor's van to triumph crashed each Connacht clan, and fleet is Jah the Normans ran through Corsiav Pass and Ardrahan, and later times saw deeds as brave and glory guards Clan Ricard's grave. Sing, oh, they died their land to save.
Lord Mayor, Chairperson, committee members, friends, and I never thought I'd hear myself say it, bondholders.
Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome the esteemed Lord Mayor of Dublin.
And fleet is Jah the Normans ran through Corsiav Pass and Ardrahan.
You are now witnessing history, but these are the first 16 bondholders.
It's imperative that, regardless of the government think, that we save this sacred battlefield area.
We'll come here for the official launch of the 1916 Centennial Bond Scheme for Saving Moore Street. I commend this very innovative plan to raise funds here in the city, across Ireland and internationally, to allow these sacred buildings, so central to the birthplace of our Republic, to be preserved and restored for our future generations.
I do not want to see another shopping centre if it replaces the historic buildings of North Street. In fact, I would be disgusted to see a shopping centre take over. Wouldn't it be amazing to show people where we can actually walk in the same steps as the founders of this nation and feel the history that surrounds us?
Hello, my name is Jim Brooks. I am the publisher of the Irish Gazette newspaper in St. Paul, Minnesota. We have readers in the states of Iowa, South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, Wisconsin, and of course, Minnesota. And I want to express my support for the Moore Street scheme and to help make this sacred battlefield site preserved and restored, both for the Irish at home and abroad.
Hello, my name is Dennis Brady. Although I live in the U.S., my interest in Ireland and its history has always remained constant. I want to lend my support to the Save the Moore Street Battlefield Buy a Bond campaign. I, for one, will purchase a bond for me and my 5 grandchildren.
My name is Colette Palsgraaf. I'm from the Netherlands and I've just purchased a bond to save Moore Street. In my home country, the Jan Frank House was saved and restored. People from all over the world have been able to visit and are educated about its history. Now, wouldn't it be fantastic if people from Ireland and abroad can learn all about the Easter Rising by walking the laneways, see the terrace restored to its former glory? We owe it to the men and women of the GPO garrison to save Moore Street and all its laneways. We cannot allow the national monument to be dwarfed by a shopping centre. So please, buy a bond.
Hi, I'm Maureen Kennedy. I'm here in the Irish Heritage Centre of Greater Cincinnati in Ohio. I'm the founder of the Heritage Centre, and it was started 6 years ago in efforts to preserve, educate, and entertain in all things Irish. I'm also the artistic director of the Irish American Theatre Company. I was very happy to hear about the efforts to save Moore Street. To have all those buildings that you could go into, to relive a part of Irish history is very exciting to me, and I am passionate about making this thing come true. Please join me in the efforts with your bonds and help support Moore Street. This is very important, not only to the Irish in Ireland, but also to the diaspora and all the ancestry across all nations. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Kent Covey. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. My grandmother immigrated to Pennsylvania in the United States over 100 years ago. And I am very passionate about Irish history and culture. I'm so excited that there's a bond program in progress to save the Moore Street battlefield. I'm buying a bond. I hope you will too. Thank you very much.
Greetings from Chicago. I'm James O'Connor Corboy, managing partner of Riley Partners here in the Windy City. 100 years ago right now, our great-grandfather, Edward Fitzsimmons Dunn, was the governor of Illinois. He'd previously been the first Irishman ever elected to be mayor of Chicago. But do you know what? That simply never would have been a possibility had it not been for what your grandparents and great-grandparents were doing back in Ireland at the exact same time fighting for freedom. Without the freedom that you gained for homeland rule and the Irish Republic, what happened for Irish people the world over simply would have never been possible. So, as we approach the 2016 remembrance of the 1916 uprising and a chance to remember and thank the Irish that created the freedom that we've all enjoyed, count us in to support the Moore Street effort to keep those buildings around, to keep the lanes of freedom open and available for future generations, Americans, Irish, and visitors from all over the world to be able to see the place where freedom was created. Count us in on the 1916 Centennial bonds. Chicagoans, Corboys, Dunns, and O'Connors, and every Irish family that we can get behind it will lend our support. Ireland, you've always had our back, you've always been in our corner, and we'll be in your corner now.
Hi, this is Aidan Stokes in Sydney, Australia. Just a quick note to express our support of the 1916 Centenary Bond Scheme and the reclamation of the historic building in Moore Street in which the rebels in 1916 held up. This building has to stay in public hands. You have our full support from Sydney, Australia. We're looking forward to reclaiming and restoring that building for the people of Ireland.
We've got in contact, the more we realise that the whole diaspora of Irish citizens all around the world are very interested in this.
Hi, my name is Erica Vale and I'm researching my great-great-grandfather, Colonel Thomas Joseph Kelly, who was saved from the van by the people who eventually were murdered by the British, the Manchester Martyrs.
Piece of Irish heritage, so plenty blood in your veins.
We are very lucky that nearly the whole area, in the whole street and the back lanes and the backyards are preserved now. There are many pre-1916 structures still extant now, so this definitely will be preserved and become a real proper historical district, both for educational and touristic purposes.
I know about Moore Street. I'm involved in the Save Moore Street campaign. I feel passionately about it. As an emigrant returning, I guess there's an element of nostalgia, but it's a centuries-old street market. It's the last place where some of the signatories and leaders spent their last days, the place of surrender. The laneways are hugely significant where the O'Rahilly was gunned down. I don't want to see those go. I don't want to see another shopping centre. Then I walked down to Jervis Street to retrace my grandmother's footsteps, and I see a shopping centre, I see the Leprechaun Museum. I see no indication again of what went on here. I can't believe it. It beggars belief.
Well, I'd like to think that, now that we have it, that it is a national monument, I would like to see the rest of it preserved. I like the idea of a museum or maybe a walking tour from the side of the GPO where they all evacuated all the way down through Moore Lane and Moore Street. I think that we need to keep it for all the people of Ireland, for future generations. I just want my little part in it, being from the diaspora. I want to sort of shed light over in the United States a little bit more about it.
Okay.
It's a shame. Here we are in the first week of the centenary of 1916, and we have this situation where developers have gone in, builders have gone in and attempted to demolish one of the buildings in which the provisional government and the rank and file volunteers stayed in the last days of Easter week. It's an absolute shame and a disgrace. The other irony is that this building, 14 to 17, the National Monument part of the terrace, has been in the ownership of the state, in public ownership, in your ownership, for the last number of months. Yet the minister, in whose care it is supposed to be, has now tried to proceed with the developer's plan, with the chartered land plan. This must stop.
Well, we did have a topical issue with Minister Humphreys on Thursday afternoon in the Dáil, and one of the points I was making was to know where the conservation architect is. Why that person is not on site here all the time to ensure that what's going on in 14 to 17 and beside it is not damaging really important aspects of the buildings. We still don't have any answer to that. So the relatives came down on Friday with their own conservation experts, and they, with the group of us from the Dáil and the Lord Mayor of Dublin, tried to get entrance into it. Now, there was only a small group of us. We were really anxious for the conservation people to go right in. We were prepared to kind of wait on the just in the site office, but it was like a stalemate, deadlock, and it was done kind of in a very undignified, stealthy sort of way. So I can totally understand where the protest came from, and it's well that it did, because it is putting the attention on this that it hasn't been getting, and the way in which there was deliberate dereliction and deliberate neglect of this street, and it could be just a wonderful cultural, historical quarter.
How come that that the government were able to get NAMA to take Westport House away from the portfolio, but they can't take the birthplace of the Republic away from NAMA?
The biggest concern is they haven't told anybody. Nobody knows exactly what's happening here. This is the battlefield site. This is 2016, the 100th anniversary of the 1916 Rising, and the first thing the government do is go in and start to demolish part of the battlefield site without any warning, in the middle of the night.
100 years ago, the Irish Republic was declared, and as a nation, we should be celebrating our centenary and celebrating the brave men and women who fought for Irish freedom. But instead, the Irish government, whose Fine Gael members sit across this chamber, would like to see our history erased, not just figuratively, but literally. They want to demolish the site where the leaders of the 1916 Rising spent their last hours before their execution.
What's happening today? Well, there's a march in connection with the Moore Street Terrace campaign. The Banksy illustration has just been removed by the government last night. That's where we're at now. And today, we're looking at drawing attention to this battlefield area.
And in the years to come, Ireland will honour those who risked all for her honour in Easter of 1916.
And surely this is a message very clearly now to the government that you must save the Moore Street terrace and you must save the street for battlefield site. And congratulations to all.
We're in number 18 on the Moore Street terrace, a historic 1916 battle site, where the provisional government of the Irish Republic made their last stand. This particular building is not owned by the state, this is owned by the developer, so this is the building that's under the most threat of demolition. So we're here to stop that happening. This is a national monument and needs to be preserved for future generations.
The people who occupy those buildings saved them from being demolished. And the campaign that we have now, Build Together, will hopefully ensure that the 1916 terrace will be saved for the benefit of generations to come, both in Ireland and around the world.
100 years ago, the British state was our enemy. Right now, the Irish state is our enemy.
Accept the fact that we've won. We've brought them to a point that they can now confront the state on a level basis, and they more or less want us to live. Right? Now, we've already said from the beginning that this action was to complement the overall campaign. It's an action. It's not a fucking occupation. It's an occupation as a tactic in a strategy to the overall campaign. We've now done that. We've made our action for what Dan and Bratnock has been doing for the last 14 to 16 months.
With the availability of the Bureau of Military History Archive, which is a treasure trove, it's actually quite clear that Moore Street is far more important than any of us realised. That there's a colossal amount of significant activity that took place there. And I'll say just one thing. It is a non-contested matter of fact that the decision to surrender in 1916 took place within the Moore Street terrace, on the cusp of a potential and near suicidal attack on the Parnell Street barricade. This is quite simply a fact, and any comparable site in the United States of America, in the United Kingdom, in France would be protected.
Some historians and architects have disgraced themselves by trying to play down the significance of the street. Much has been written, quite rightly, about the architectural importance of Moore Street, but streets aren't just bricks and mortar. The street also has character. In 1988, Dublin Corporation put up a statue to a fictional street trader who never walked the earth, Molly Malone. But a real-life equivalent is found on Moore Street. There are people on that street who were there for decades and whose families were there before them.
The record shows that citizens saved Moore Street while successive administrations shamefully failed to secure or protect the most important historic site in modern Irish history, in our interest, the public interest, while they pandered to the commercial interest of a failed property developer. We welcome the adopted position of the construction section of SIP2 for their principled stand in opposition to any proposed destruction of the Moore Street battlefield. Moore Street is the great survivor of that blitz designed to crush forever any semblance of resistance to British rule in Ireland.
Because Moore Street hasn't been saved yet. A lot of people think it's been saved because of the judgment on the 18th of March this year, but the Minister is appealing the entire judgment.
Well, I understand we had good news yesterday in the legal department.
We're here in particular in opposition to an appeal by Minister Humphreys on top of Judge Barrett's decision to have Moore Street declared as a national monument. It's abhorrent that Judge Barrett's decision should be appealed by one of our own ministers, who only a few months ago was laying a wreath on Moore Street.
And we honour those who occupied those buildings in 1916. And we stand here today and we say to them, we have not forgotten. We remember you, your bravery, and it informs us and inspires us to do what we are doing. And we have chosen to be your inheritors. And we will not, we cannot, we should not, we will not lose. We will win.
It is time we followed the example of our freedom fighters. They faced down their adversaries of their day and made history for tomorrow. Today, it is our time, and the Moore Street battle site represents the rebirth of a nation.
There has been a joint purchase of Project Jewel from the National Asset Management Agency, NAMA, for $1.85 billion. The loans are connected with Irish property developer Joe O'Reilly and his company Chartered Land, and are the biggest sale to date by NAMA. Hammerson is paying $1.23 billion and Alliance $620 million. This includes a 5-acre city centre site bounded by O'Connell Street and Muir Street. Chief Executive of Hammerson's, David Atkins, told the Irish Times, "We are a long-term investor with very supportive shareholders, so it's about getting this right, not just the speed of execution." Annette Kroger, Chief Executive of Alliance Real Estate Germany, said, "We have 1 or 2 years to think about that." Neither ruled out her role for the Irish developer Joe O'Reilly in the future.
So what's happening here on the 9th of July?
The Save Moore Street campaign is going to be having a protest to save our revolutionary quarter, and we're calling on everybody around the country who has an interest in saving their heritage to come to Dublin and to stand with us and to send a message not only to Heather Humphreys but to Chartered Lands as well, that we're not going to take this line down. They can extend their planning permission, they can appeal all they want, but the people are organised and they're willing to fight back.
Let's get rid of this old terrace. Build a shopping centre here today.
A nation once again. A nation once again. An Ireland on a Providence Day. A nation once again. It whispers through a freedom divine. A service high and holy. But people faint by feelings dark.
Today we're here to present this to Hammerson's, to invite Simon Betty to attend the People's Public Forum on Moore Street on the 10th of September.
down here to hand in a letter to invite them to tell us what their plans are for the area.
Irish Independent, 10th of July 2016. When asked if Hammerson would engage with the relevant stakeholders in relation to Hammerson's plans for development on its Dublin central site, which encompasses a 1916 Rising battlefield site, Simon Betty has said that the process would begin immediately. He said, "We are aware of the sensitivities and we're very aware of our responsibilities in terms of bringing that forward in a sympathetic yet commercially acceptable manner. In the coming weeks and months, we'll be looking to reach out and hear from all the connected parties." The author of a report put before the High Court, archaeologist Frank Miles, has said he has some sympathy with the view that an area on and around Moore Street constitutes a 1916 battlefield. Because of that sympathy, Mr. Miles, a specialist in historical archaeology, was reluctant to provide a sworn statement for the Minister of Arts, Heritage and the Gaeltacht as part of her opposition to an action aimed at preserving a 1916 battlefield site in the area.
We salute the Noisy campaign as a leading historian and advisor to the infamous Ireland Inspires programme, disparagingly put it, on a stunning victory in the High Court to preserve the last extant 1916 battlefield in Moore Street. Of the rising judge, Max Barrett said, "The hardest of battles fought by the toughest of people for the greatest of ends." The same can be said of the principled 14-year campaign to save Moore Street, the birthplace of the Republic, from the developers' wrecking ball. We salute all campaigners today. The toughest of people who fought the hardest of battles for the greatest ends. We repeat today, the last extant 1916 battlefield will not be destroyed in our watch. We will defend it to the last.